The classified contract worth more than their entire company's lifetime earnings lay before me, waiting for my signature. 8 years. 8 long years since they'd branded me the family failure and pushed me toward the door with my belongings in trash bags. 8 years since my sister had mockingly called me, that computer girl who thinks she's important, as I loaded my beaten-up Honda Civic. My phone vibrated against the mahogany desk of my corner office. Mom's picture flashed on the screen, that same patronizing expression she'd perfected when never explaining to friends that her youngest daughter plays around with technology stuff. I could have ignored it. Should have, probably. But curiosity won out, especially considering what I knew about Wilson Security's dire financial situation. Their empire was crumbling, and they had no idea their estranged daughter held the keys to either salvation or complete destruction. Mum. Sweetie. That artificially sweet voice she deployed when needing favors. The same tone she'd used years ago when begging me to just look at the family computer real quick before ultimately deciding my help wasn't worth the embarrassment of having a daughter in technology. I'm calling about Taylor's engagement celebration next weekend at the St. Regis. Very exclusive venue. Very high-class affair. Of course it was. Everything the Wilson family touched had to scream success, particularly when that success balanced precariously on a foundation of outdated security protocols and willful technological ignorance. I signed my name with deliberate precision. The pen carried the weight of federal authority and 8 years of carefully orchestrated vindication. Thanks to classification requirements, my family remained blissfully unaware that their computer girl now controlled cybersecurity for critical infrastructure protecting 40 million Americans. But that ignorance was about to end. We've invited our most valuable clients, Mom continued. Wilson Security's premier accounts. It's essentially a business networking event disguised as a family celebration. Naturally. With the Wilsons, family always served business interests. Everything revolved around maintaining the illusion that their surname carried weight in the security industry. Taylor's marrying Connor Matthews, Mom gushed. He's the sales executive at Secure Tech Industries. They provide all our security equipment. Such a strategic alliance, mixing business with romance. Perfect. My sister was cementing her status as the golden child by marrying into their business ecosystem, solidifying her position while I remained the family disappointment in their minds. I trust you'll dress appropriately, Mom said, that familiar edge creeping into her voice. Nothing too attention-grabbing. You understand how you sometimes are. How I sometimes was. As if confidence were a personality disorder. Will you be bringing a guest? Perhaps a boyfriend? Someone established. The subtext was crystal clear. Someone unlike me. Someone with what they considered a legitimate career. I'll be there. I replied simply. Wonderful. And sweetheart, please try to blend into the background. This is Taylor's moment. Keep your tech enthusiasm to yourself, if you know what I mean. My tech enthusiasm. The same enthusiasm that had just secured me a classified federal contract worth more than Wilson Security would generate in a decade. After ending the call, I gazed out my office window at downtown San Francisco. 45 stories below, ordinary citizens went about their daily routines, protected by systems my team had architected. Banking networks, transit grids, communication infrastructure, all secured by programs we designed while my family assumed I was tinkering with gadgets. Taylor's engagement party was 6 days away. 6 days until I entered that room and revealed exactly what their computer girl had accomplished. The insecure child they'd psychologically demolished was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd constructed a technological empire while they remained oblivious. Time to demonstrate what genuine power looked like. Don't touch that computer without authorization. You're banned from using it permanently. Dad's voice had echoed through our Palo Alto residence as he'd physically dragged me away from his desktop. I'd only been attempting to eliminate the malware causing severe performance issues. I'd taught myself basic diagnostics from library resources, spending countless after-school hours mastering systems and networks while other children socialized outdoors. But Dad hadn't wanted the computer repaired. He'd wanted his browsing history concealed. The revelation struck me like ice water. The computer wasn't just sluggish due to malware, It was compromised because Dad had been frequenting sites he couldn't let Mom discover. Adult entertainment platforms, online gambling establishments, places that explained our family's persistent financial struggles despite Dad's supposedly thriving business. I'd only been 12, but I'd grasped enough about computers to recognize what I'd accidentally uncovered. And I'd understood enough about family psychology to realize that exposing it would only intensify their hostility toward me. "Why can't you be normal like your sister?" he continued, his face flushed with embarrassment and fury. "There might be something fundamentally wrong with you. Something wrong with me. For wanting to comprehend how technology functioned. For being intellectually curious about computers. For being different from Taylor, who spent her afternoons rehearsing sales presentations and absorbing the family business culture. For accidentally discovering that our family's pristine image was constructed on deception." Mom had positioned herself in the doorway, arms folded, endorsing his verbal assault. "Madison needs to concentrate on conventional pursuits, feminine activities like domestic responsibilities and social development, and becoming a respectable woman. Feminine activities like pretending not to notice when your spouse was gambling away the family's financial security online." That night, lying awake at age 12, I'd begun strategizing. Not vengeance, I was too young for that. But independence. I'd conserve every dollar. I'd master everything possible through public libraries and free educational resources. I'd become so exceptionally skilled at this nonsense that eventually they'd be forced to acknowledge its legitimacy. More critically, I'd never again depend on people who would sacrifice my well-being to protect their own secrets. The following week, at 12 years old, I'd opened my first savings account, accumulating birthday money and allowances in a shoebox beneath my bed. $7,342, my initial step toward freedom. I just hadn't anticipated it would require quite so much time. The Pacific Computer Society convened every Thursday evening at the local community college. I discovered it accidentally while walking home from school past the computer laboratory, where I'd observed adults hunched over terminals writing code that resembled magic. Dr. Martinez, a retired IBM engineer, had become my unofficial mentor. He taught me programming languages, network architecture, and cybersecurity fundamentals. For 3 months, I'd been the youngest member of a group that included software engineers, IT professionals, and passionate hobbyists. For 3 months, I'd experienced belonging somewhere. "Mom, Dad, Madison is playing pretend hacker girl with those strange computer people again," Taylor had announced at dinner, her voice theatrical with manufactured concern. She'd been surveillance me. My own sister had conducted espionage and reported back as if I were committing criminal acts. "Madison." Dad's voice had been ominously quiet. "You're associating with adult men you don't know. That ends immediately." "They're instructors," I'd protested. "They're helping me learn." "Those computer enthusiasts are filling your head with fantasies," Dad had interrupted. "Focus on reality. Focus on skills that have actual value." "This does have value," I'd shouted, my 14-year-old voice breaking with frustration. "This is the future." Taylor had actually laughed. Genuinely laughed. "The future, Madison? It's make-believe. It's pretend. You're inhabiting a fantasy realm. If that's your future, you'll never find a husband." The next day, Dad had contacted Dr. Martinez personally, informing him that his daughter was permanently prohibited from attending the society meetings. I'd never experienced such humiliation in my life. But I'd also never felt more determined. If they intended to sever my formal education, I'd educate myself. If they believed technology was pretend, I'd demonstrate how tangible it could become. That night, I'd initiated my first serious project, a simple program to document every insult, every dismissal, every moment they'd made me feel insignificant. I named it my motivation database. By high school graduation, it contained 47 pages of detailed entries. Computer science is for exceptional geniuses and social outcasts who can't secure legitimate employment. "You're not a genius, are you?" Mom's words had struck like a physical assault on my aspirations. We'd been sitting in the high school guidance counselor's office discussing college applications. I'd finally gathered courage to mention my genuine interests. Criminal justice, Dad had declared firmly, as if the decision was final. Study criminal justice or finance your own education. But I want to pursue computer science, I'd whispered. I excel at it. Being proficient at computer games isn't equivalent to being capable of computer science, Mom had replied. Honey, you need to maintain realistic expectations about your capabilities. My capabilities? I'd been self-teaching programming languages since age 12. I'd constructed my first functional network security system at 16. I'd been accepted to UC Berkeley's computer science program with partial scholarship funding. But according to my mother, I lacked genius-level potential. Criminal justice is practical, Dad had continued. It's connected to security work. You can contribute to the family business eventually. The family business. Wilson Security Services, which Dad operated using obsolete methods and elementary security protocols. Truly cutting-edge operations. Ultimately, I'd compromised criminal justice at San Jose State with a secret minor in computer science. I'd funded the additional courses with income from my part-time position at a computer repair shop, where I'd gained more practical cybersecurity knowledge in 6 months than most people acquired in 4 years of university education. My parents believed I was preparing to become a law enforcement officer. What I was actually doing was establishing the groundwork for what would eventually become Fortress Technologies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Studying criminal justice while planning the perfect crime, stealing my family's respect, and proving them catastrophically wrong. Stop embarrassing our family with this computer nonsense. Taylor's voice had sliced across our parents' living room like a blade. I'd made the error of mentioning my internship opportunity at CyberGuard Solutions, a mid-tier cybersecurity firm in San Francisco. I was a college senior, just months from graduation. It's a legitimate internship, I'd said quietly. With actual compensation. Genuine work. Genuine work? Dad had laughed. Staring at computer screens all day? That's not genuine work. Genuine work is what Taylor does. Communicating with clients, solving real problems, building relationships. Taylor had glowed at the praise. She'd recently been promoted to senior consultant at Wilson Security, meaning she was now Dad's business partner in addition to being his preferred daughter. I determine your future, Dad had continued, his voice escalating. Don't make independent decisions. Who do you think funded your tuition? The threat was unmistakable. Conform or lose financial support. Our little computer girl thinks she's going to have a career, Taylor had said, using the nickname that had evolved from childhood teasing into genuine cruelty. It's actually quite pathetic. That afternoon, I'd contacted CyberGuard Solutions to decline the internship. Then I'd call them back from my cell phone using a different voice to inquire if the position remained available for another candidate. It wasn't about the internship. It was about control. But control, I was learning, was bidirectional. If they wanted to control my education, I'd control my response. I'd become the perfect daughter on the surface, while constructing my real life covertly. I'd already begun freelancing under a pseudonym, handling small cybersecurity consulting projects for local businesses. Money that accumulated in a secret bank account my parents didn't know existed. Money that would eventually finance my independence and my vindication. You're no daughter of mine. Real Wilson women pursue real careers, not this pathetic computer girl fantasy. Dad's words had lingered in the air like smoke from an explosion. We'd been having the conversation I'd been dreading for months, my post-graduation career plans. Wilson Security had offered me a position as an administrative assistant, filing documents, answering phones, preparing coffee for the actual security professionals. $28,000 annually to be their office assistant.
I de declinat.
The amusing thing was I'd actually considered it for approximately 10 minutes. Not because I wanted the position, but because I'd thought maybe working alongside them would finally earn their acknowledgement. Maybe they'd recognize that I could contribute to the family business in my own capacity. Then I'd remembered the secret freelance work I'd been conducting for the past year. The 12 businesses I'd already helped secure their networks. The $30,000 I'd earned from cybersecurity consulting, more than Wilson Security's administrative assistant salary. I'd remembered the offer letter from CyberGuard Solutions proposing a junior analyst position with a starting salary of $65,000. The letter I'd never shown my parents because they'd simply find new methods to diminish it. I constructed this company for my daughters, Dad continued, his face purple with rage. You're destroying everything I worked for. I want to build my own company, I'd said quietly. In cybersecurity. I have clients already. I have a business strategy.
Client.
Mom had shrieked. What clients? Who would hire you for anything? I could have told them about Mrs. Patterson's accounting firm, where I'd prevented a data breach that would have exposed hundreds of client tax returns. I could have mentioned Dr. Rodriguez's dental practice, where I'd recovered 10 years of patient records from a ransomware attack. I could have shown them the testimonials from business owners who credited me with saving their enterprises. Instead, I'd remained silent. They wouldn't believe it anyway. Listen to me very carefully, Dad had said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper he used when truly angry. You can accept the position at Wilson Security, or you can figure out how to support yourself. But you will not embarrass this family with your computer fantasies. Computer fantasies. The same fantasies that had already generated more income than their administrative position would provide. Fine, pathetic computer girl, Taylor had said, her voice dripping with finality. Go live in your fantasy realm and see how that works out. The nickname had evolved over the years. What had started as Computer Girl when I was 14 had become Little Computer Girl at 21. And now, Pathetic Computer Girl at 22. Each iteration more dismissive than the previous. Each one designed to make me feel smaller, more ridiculous, more ashamed of my passion. Get out, Dad had said. Pack your belongings and get out. You're not welcome here until you regain your sanity. They'd given me 30 minutes to pack. 30 minutes to gather the possessions of 22 years into garbage bags and cardboard boxes. As I loaded my car, neighbors watched from their windows. The Wilson family drama unfolding in broad daylight on one of Palo Alto's most exclusive streets. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door had approached as I'd struggled with a particularly heavy box. Madison, dear, are you okay? I'd looked at this compassionate woman who'd always treated me with more respect than my own family, and I'd made a decision. I'm launching my own business, I told her, in cybersecurity. If you ever need assistance with your computer systems, please contact me. She'd accepted my business card, one of 50 I'd had printed for my freelance consulting work, and promised to stay in touch. 2 weeks later, she'd referred me to her small business networking group. That referral had generated 6 new clients within the first month. Don't come crawling back when reality hits, Mom had called from the front entrance. We won't be here to rescue you. I'd driven away without looking back. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I was hurt, though I was that too. I'd driven away because I finally understood that proving them wrong wasn't sufficient anymore. I wanted to obliterate their entire worldview. And sitting in my car outside their perfect house, with my savings account balance of $23,847 and a client list that was expanding every week, I'd begun planning exactly how I was going to accomplish it. Those first 12 months after being expelled were the most challenging of my existence. Not because of the poverty, though surviving on $800 monthly while building a business was brutal, but because every day felt like an examination of whether I was actually capable of the achievements I claimed I could deliver. My first client was Mrs. Patterson, who owned a small accounting firm in Berkeley. Her computers had been infected with malware that was systematically stealing client tax information. She'd found me through a Craigslist advertisement I'd posted. Cybersecurity consulting, $50 per hour, results guaranteed. $50 hourly was negligible compared to what established firms charged, but it was $50 more than I'd possessed that morning. I spent 14 hours cleaning her systems, installing proper security software, and training her employees in basic digital hygiene. When I presented her with the invoice for $700, she stared at it like I'd requested her firstborn child. Other companies quoted me $5,000, she said. Other companies would have sold you services you didn't need, I replied. I fixed your actual problem. She paid me that day and referred 3 other small businesses within the week. Word spread through the small business community. There was a young woman who genuinely understood technology and charged reasonable rates. Within 6 months, I had 23 regular clients. Hair salons, restaurants, medical practices, law firms, all the small businesses that major cybersecurity companies ignored because they weren't profitable enough. But small businesses, I discovered, were also the most appreciative clients. When I saved Dr. Rodriguez's dental practice from a ransomware attack that would have destroyed 10 years of patient records, he insisted on taking me to dinner and introducing me to half his professional network. Madison saved my entire practice. He'd tell anyone who would listen. Without her, I would have lost everything. My breakthrough came through pure fortune and 18-hour workdays. Sarah Kim, who operated a mid-sized logistics company, had been referred to me by one of my dental practice clients. Her company's shipping system had been compromised, and trucks full of valuable cargo were being rerouted to locations where thieves were waiting. The police were baffled. The insurance company was threatening to cancel her coverage. Her business was hemorrhaging money. "I need someone who thinks like a criminal," she told me during our first meeting. "The police keep insisting this is sophisticated, but they can't determine how it's happening." It took me 3 days of analyzing system logs to locate the breach. Someone had infiltrated their shipping software through a vulnerability in a third-party weather application that drivers use to plan routes. The hackers weren't just stealing cargo. They were selling route information to organized theft rings. But here's what distinguished me from every other cybersecurity consultant Sarah had hired. I didn't just repair the problem. I tracked down the hackers using techniques I'd learned from my criminal justice classes and cybersecurity forums. I traced the intrusion back to its source. I identified the theft ring, mapped their operation, and delivered a complete investigation package to the FBI. The arrests made national news. Local cybersecurity expert helps FBI dismantle organized crime ring. Suddenly, my phone was ringing with calls from companies I'd only dreamed of working with. But more importantly, Special Agent Thompson from the FBI's Cybercrime Division called me personally. "Miss Wilson, we'd like to discuss some consulting opportunities with the Bureau. Are you available for a security clearance background investigation?" The FBI background check consumed 4 months. For months during which federal investigators interviewed every person I'd ever known, reviewed every financial transaction I'd ever made, and probably knew more about my life than I did. When Agent Thompson called to inform me I'd been approved for top-secret clearance, I was sitting in my first legitimate office, a 400-square-foot space in downtown Oakland that I shared with a freelance graphic designer. "Your first assignment is straightforward," Agent Thompson explained during our initial briefing. "There's been a series of probes against Northern California's water treatment facilities. Nothing successful yet, but the pattern suggests someone is mapping vulnerabilities for a coordinated attack. Water treatment facilities, the infrastructure that provided clean drinking water to millions of people. If someone successfully attacked those systems, the results wouldn't just be inconvenient. They could be fatal." I spent 3 weeks analyzing the probe patterns, identifying the attack vectors, and designing countermeasures. What I discovered was terrifying. The attacks were sophisticated, coordinated, and clearly state-sponsored. Someone with serious resources was planning to contaminate the water supply of major California cities. My report to the FBI was 127 pages long and included recommendations for immediate security upgrades across the entire Northern California water system. 2 weeks later, Agent Thompson called with an update. "We intercepted the actual attack. Your countermeasures functioned perfectly. You probably saved millions of lives." Millions of lives. While my family thought I was playing computer games, I was literally protecting the infrastructure that kept their communities alive. The water facility's success led to additional government contracts, power grids, transportation networks, communication systems, all the invisible digital infrastructure that modern life depends on. By year 4, I couldn't handle the workload alone. I was declining lucrative contracts because I simply didn't have enough hours in the day. That's when I hired my first employee, Marcus Torres, a brilliant cybersecurity engineer who'd been laid off when his previous company downsized. Marcus brought expertise in industrial control systems, the specialized computers that operate power plants, water facilities, and manufacturing equipment. Why do you want to work for a one-person consulting firm? I'd asked during his interview. Because you're not just consulting, he'd replied. You're actually protecting things that matter. I've been following your work through industry publications. The water facility case, the logistics company breakthrough, the federal infrastructure contracts. You're building something significant. Marcus was correct. I wasn't just building a business anymore. I was building a mission. Our second hire was Dr. Priya Patel, a former NSA cryptographer who specialized in defending against state-sponsored attacks. Our third was James Liu, a former Google engineer who understood cloud security better than anyone I'd ever met. Each new team member brought expertise that multiplied our capabilities. We weren't just fixing problems anymore. We were anticipating them. We were building systems that could detect and neutralize threats before they became attacks. The call that transformed everything came on a Tuesday morning in March. Not from Agent Thompson, but from someone much higher up the federal hierarchy. Miss Wilson, this is Deputy Director Harrison from the Department of Homeland Security. We need to discuss an urgent matter. Can you be in Washington by Thursday? Washington. The major leagues. The meeting was held in a windowless conference room deep inside DHS headquarters. Present were representatives from the FBI, NSA, CIA, and something called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency that I'd never heard of. Ms. Wilson, Deputy Director Harrison began. In the past 2 years, your company has successfully defended against 12 major cyber attacks on critical U.S. infrastructure. Your success rate is unprecedented. 12 attacks. I'd known about most of them, but some had been so seamlessly neutralized by our automated systems that I hadn't even realized how serious they were. We're facing a new level of threat, he continued. Nation-state actors are targeting our most vulnerable systems with increasingly sophisticated attacks. We need partners who can respond quickly and effectively. He slid a folder across the table. We'd like to offer Fortress Technologies a comprehensive contract to serve as the primary cybersecurity partner for critical infrastructure protection nationwide. The contract was everything I'd dreamed of and more. Not just Northern California, but the entire United States. Not just consultation, but operational authority to implement protection measures across federal systems. The financial terms were classified, but they were sufficient to transform Fortress Tech from a successful consulting firm into one of the most important cybersecurity companies in America. There's one condition, Deputy Director Harrison added. This work requires absolute secrecy. You'll be protecting systems that most Americans don't even know exist. You'll be preventing attacks that can never be publicly acknowledged. Absolute secrecy, which meant my family would never know what I actually did for a living. I signed the contract that afternoon. Fortress Technologies now occupied 3 floors of a downtown San Francisco high-rise. 47 employees, all with top-level security clearances. Annual revenue that I couldn't legally disclose, but was somewhere north of what most Fortune 500 companies generated. We protected power grids that supplied electricity to 40 million Americans. Water systems that provided clean drinking water to major metropolitan areas. Transportation networks that moved people and goods across the continent. We were, in the words of our federal liaisons, essential to national security. And my family still thought I played with computers for a living.
My phone rang.
Unknown number, but I recognized the area code.
Palo Alto.
Madison? This is Connor Matthews, Taylor's fiancé. The sales director from Secure Tech Industries. Connor, congratulations on the engagement. Thank you. Listen, I'm calling because, well, this is uncomfortable. I'm hoping you can help with something concerning. What kind of help? It's about your family's company, Wilson Security. We've been doing business with them for years, and recently we've noticed some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Someone's been probing their networks. Testing for vulnerabilities. Our automated systems flagged it last week. The same attacks Agent Thompson had mentioned. Connor was calling to warn me that my family's business was under cyber assault. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. Have you informed them? I asked. I tried. Your father says their systems are impenetrable because they use passwords and firewalls. Your sister thinks cybersecurity is just a method for tech companies to sell expensive software. Of course they did. I'm worried, Connor continued. If someone breaches their client data, Wilson Security could be liable for millions in damages. They could lose everything. Everything. The business Dad had built. The reputation he'd cultivated. The financial security that had allowed them to dismiss my dreams as hobbies. Madison, I know you work in computers. I was hoping you might talk to them. Make them understand how serious this is. Work in computers. Even now, even calling to request my help, he couldn't bring himself to acknowledge what I actually did. I'll consider it, I said. The engagement party is this weekend. Maybe you could mention it then. Maybe. After hanging up, I leaned back in my executive chair. Genuine leather, cost more than my parents' monthly mortgage, and smiled. This was perfect. Better than perfect. In 4 days, I'd walk into Taylor's engagement party. I'd watch them parade their success and their important clients. I'd listen to them explain to strangers why their youngest daughter was such a disappointment. And then, when the moment was exactly right, I'd let them discover who I really was. Not the broken little girl they'd thrown away. Not the computer girl they'd mocked and dismissed. The woman who'd built an empire while they weren't looking. The woman whose company protected the infrastructure that kept their lights on and their water running. The woman who could save their business with a single phone call or watch it burn with equal satisfaction. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't a dish best served cold. It was best served with a side of perfect irony. The private dining room was exactly what I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and an atmosphere of calculated elegance designed to impress clients and competitors alike. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A black dress that was expensive enough to belong but simple enough not to upstage the bride-to-be. Professional, confident, but not flashy. Everything my mother had trained me to be when I was trying to fit into their world. Now I was just playing dress-up. Madison. Taylor spotted me first, gliding across the room in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked radiant, successful, and completely unaware that her world was about to shift on its axis. She embraced me with practiced warmth, the kind of hug that looks genuine from a distance but feels hollow up close. "I'm so glad you could make it," she said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Everyone, this is my little sister, Madison. She works with computers." Works with computers. Like I was a tech support operator at an electronics store. "Madison, come meet Connor," Taylor continued, guiding me toward a tall man in an expensive suit who was deep in conversation with a group of middle-aged professionals. Connor Matthews looked exactly like what central casting would order for a successful corporate executive. Square jaw, perfect teeth, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove himself to anyone. "Connor, honey, this is Madison." He turned, and I watched recognition flicker across his features. We'd spoken on the phone, but this was our first face-to-face meeting. "Madison, it's great to finally meet you in person." His handshake was firm, and his eyes held a question he couldn't ask in present company. "Congratulations," I said simply. "Taylor's a lucky woman." "I'm the lucky one," he replied, pulling Taylor closer. "Your sister's been invaluable to Wilson Security's growth. She's the future of the company." The future of the company. I wondered how long that future would last once their cyber vulnerabilities became public knowledge. "Madison, come say hello to Mom and Dad," Taylor said, steering me toward the center of the room where our parents were holding court with what appeared to be their most important clients. Dad looked distinguished in his tuxedo, every inch the successful businessman. Mom was radiant in navy blue, playing the perfect hostess. They were in their element, surrounded by people who respected their success and wanted their business. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old longing, the desire to belong to this world, to be included in their pride and satisfaction. Then I remembered the garbage bags on the curb. "There's our Madison," Dad said as we approached, his voice carrying just the right note of paternal affection. "Everyone, this is our youngest daughter. She's into computers." Into computers. Like it was a hobby. Like stamp collecting or bird watching. "Madison, I'd like you to meet some very important people, Mom said, launching into introductions that positioned me as the family's harmless eccentric. There was David Kim, CEO of Peninsula Manufacturing; Sarah Williams, president of Bay Area Logistics; James Rodriguez, who ran the largest commercial real estate firm in Northern California. All of them Wilson Security clients. All of them potential targets of the cyber attacks Connor had mentioned. All of them completely unaware that the woman they were politely dismissing could protect them better than anyone else in the room. And this is Jessica Martinez, Dad continued, gesturing toward a sharp-looking woman in her 50s. She runs Quantum Dynamics, largest tech consulting firm on the West Coast. I knew Quantum Dynamics. Everyone in cybersecurity knew Quantum Dynamics. They were a Fortune 500 company that specialized in digital transformation for major corporations. Jessica Martinez was legendary in the tech world. She had built her company from nothing, survived 3 recessions, and was widely regarded as one of the most brilliant business minds of her generation. She was also, if my information was correct, about to become very interested in our conversation. Ms. Martinez, I said, extending my hand. It's an honor to meet you. Please call me Jessica. And you work in computers, I hear? The question seemed innocent enough, but there was something in her tone that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. I do some cybersecurity consulting, I said carefully. How interesting. What kind of cybersecurity? Critical infrastructure protection, mainly. Government contracts. Jessica's eyebrows rose slightly. Government contracts? That's serious work. What's your company? The moment I'd been waiting for. The question that would change everything. Fortress Technologies, I said simply. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Jessica Martinez's eyes widened in genuine shock. David Kim choked on his champagne. Sarah Williams actually dropped her appetizer. Did you say Fortress Technologies? Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper.
Yes.
Fortress Technologies. As in the Fortress Technologies that prevented the West Coast power grid attack? The company that handles federal cybersecurity for 17 agencies. That's us. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear conversations from other tables. My parents looked confused. Taylor looked irritated that the attention had shifted away from her engagement. But the clients, the important people my family was trying to impress, looked like they'd just witnessed a magic trick. Wait, said David Kim, finding his voice. You're Madison Wilson. The Madison Wilson.
I'm Madison Wilson, he replied calmly.
I'm not sure about the part. Holy shit, said Sarah Williams, apparently forgetting where she was. Your company saved our logistics network last year. The ransomware attack that never happened because you stopped it. Now my parents were paying attention.
Madison, Dad said slowly.
What exactly do you do for a living? Before I could answer, Jessica Martinez spoke up. Mr. Wilson, your daughter runs one of the most successful cybersecurity firms in America. Fortress Technologies generated $45 million in revenue last year. Madison personally earned approximately $6.5 million. The silence was deafening. Mom's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Dad's face went through several color changes before settling on an alarming shade of purple. Taylor looked like someone had just informed her that gravity was optional. But that's impossible, Mom whispered. She plays with computers. She doesn't play with computers, Mrs. Wilson, said James Rodriguez. She protects them. Her systems have been safeguarding my company's data for 3 years. I pay Fortress Technologies more annually than I pay for building security. How much more? Dad asked weakly. About 10 times more. 10 times more. Dad was doing the math in his head, realizing that one of his clients was paying me more money than Wilson Security made in total revenue. There's something else, Jessica Martinez continued, her voice carrying the tone of someone delivering a final blow. Madison's company has been providing back-end security for Wilson Security's clients for the past 2 years. About half of your corporate contracts are only viable because Fortress Technologies has been protecting them from cyber threats. This was news to me, but I kept my expression neutral. Apparently, some of my government protection protocols had been automatically securing businesses connected to infrastructure we monitored. You mean, Taylor said slowly, Madison has been protecting our clients without us knowing it? Your sister's systems have prevented approximately $2 billion in potential cyber attack damages to companies in this room, Jessica confirmed. $2 billion. The number hung in the air like a sword of Damocles. But we don't pay for any cybersecurity services, Dad said, confusion evident in his voice. You don't pay because it's classified federal protection, Jessica explained. Madison's company monitors critical infrastructure, which includes the business networks of companies like yours. It's all part of national security protocols. I watched my family process this information. The daughter they dismissed as a computer girl had been protecting their livelihood without them even knowing it. The daughter they'd expelled for refusing to file paperwork was now earning more money than they'd make in their entire careers combined. The daughter they'd said would never amount to anything had just been revealed as the invisible force keeping their business afloat. Madison, Connor said, his voice filled with something that might have been awe or terror. When I called you about the cyber attacks on Wilson Security, you already knew about them, didn't you? Yes. And you've been protecting us? Your networks are automatically included in our federal infrastructure monitoring. The attacks you noticed were being neutralized in real time. Why didn't you tell us? Taylor demanded, finding her voice. I looked at my sister. Beautiful, successful, engaged to a man who could advance her career, and felt nothing but cool satisfaction. When exactly should I have told you? I asked calmly. When you called me a pathetic computer girl. When you told me I was living in a fantasy world. When Dad threw me out of the house for refusing to answer phones at your company. The questions hit like physical blows. Our parents' guests were watching this family drama unfold with the fascination of people witnessing a car accident. We never meant, Mom started. You meant exactly what you said, I interrupted. You thought I was a failure, so you treated me like one. You thought my work was pretend, so you dismissed it. You thought I'd never amount to anything, so you cut me out of your lives. But we're family, Dad said weakly. Are we? Because family doesn't throw away their children for choosing different careers. Family doesn't mock their children's dreams. Family doesn't use cruel nicknames to tear down what they've built. I turned to Jessica Martinez, who was watching this confrontation with obvious fascination. Thank you for the kind words about my company, I said. If you'll excuse me, I should be going. But before I left, I turned back to my family one last time. 8 years ago, you told me to get a real job. Tonight, you found out who had the real job and who was living in a fantasy all along. Madison, wait. Taylor called as I headed for the door. I stopped but didn't turn around. Are you going to keep protecting us? The question everyone wanted answered. The test of whether I was as petty as they'd accused me of being or as professional as I'd proven myself to be. Wilson Security's networks will continue to receive federal infrastructure protection as long as they qualify under current protocols, I said formally. Any changes to that status will be communicated through official channels. Translation: I would protect them because it was my job, not because they were my family. I walked out of the St. Regis into the San Francisco night, leaving behind the wreckage of their assumptions and the foundation of my vindication. Behind me, I could hear the murmur of voices as my family tried to explain to their most important clients how they'd managed to disown the woman who'd been keeping their businesses safe. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. The knock on my office door came at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. My assistant announced that Michael Wilson was here to see me. No appointment, but he was requesting just 5 minutes of my time. I could have said no.
Should have said no.
Instead, I said, send him in. Dad looked older than I remembered. His hair was grayer, his face more lined. The confident businessman from Taylor's engagement party had been replaced by someone who looked tired and defeated. Madison. He stood awkwardly in my office doorway, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the awards on the walls, the obvious signs of success. Thank you for seeing me. 5 minutes, I said, not offering him a seat. Wilson Security is finished, he said without preamble. Taylor's been charged with corporate espionage. She was selling client information to competitors. Connor's company is suing us. Our insurance won't cover it because it's considered an internal breach. I already knew all of this. FBI agent Thompson had briefed me when they'd arrested my sister. Apparently, Taylor had been supplementing her income by providing competitor intelligence to rivals of Wilson Security's clients. The irony was exquisite. She'd been selling the very information I'd been protecting. We're going to lose everything, Dad continued. The house, the business, everything we worked for. I waited. I know I have no right to ask, he said, his voice breaking slightly. But you're the only one who might be able to help us. Maybe you could provide character references for the bankruptcy proceedings, or help us find new work, or... He trailed off, finally understanding what he was asking. The daughter he'd disowned was his only hope for salvation. Why should I help you? I asked quietly. Because we're family. You threw me out. You said I wasn't your daughter. I was wrong. The words came out like he was pulling glass from his throat. I was wrong about everything. Your work, your success, your value. I was a fool. Too little, too late. I'll transfer $50,000 to an account of your choosing, I said. That should cover moving expenses and basic living costs for a few months. After that, you're on your own. Relief flooded his features. Madison, I can't thank you enough. I'm not doing this for you, I interrupted. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, because someone in this family should act like a decent human being. He flinched but nodded. And Dad, don't mistake charity for forgiveness. What you did to me, what you put me through, that doesn't disappear because you're sorry now. He left without another word. That afternoon, I authorized the money transfer and made a note in my calendar to send a holiday card to their new address. Not because I'd forgiven them, but because I was better than they'd raised me to be. Later that evening, I opened my laptop and accessed a file I hadn't looked at in months, my motivation database, the program I'd started at 14 to track every slight, every dismissal, every moment they'd made me feel worthless. 47 pages of documented humiliation. 8 years of fuel for my vindication. I selected all the text and hit delete. The little girl who'd been called a computer girl was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who'd learned that the best revenge isn't cruelty, it's success. What do you think about Madison's journey? If you were in her position, would you keep building your dreams in silence until they were too big to ignore? Or would you demand recognition from the start, even if it meant facing dismissal? Have you ever felt invisible to the people whose approval you craved most? Sometimes the people who hurt us most need to see exactly what they threw away. But the greatest validation doesn't come from proving others wrong. It comes from proving yourself right.